Welcome to Thrive, the podcast. In this episode, I'm speaking with Kat Schutte. She's a spiritual coach and also an energy master. So she enables her clients to hone their skills as empaths to become the most powerful version of themselves in the world. If you love this episode and you'd like to have a chat with Kat, please visit the show notes where you'll find all her contact info. And if you'd love to reach me, you can also find my details in the show notes. Enjoy, and thank you for listening. Kat, welcome to Thrive, the podcast. You've been a spiritual teacher and coach for the last 20 years. And that was a big journey for you because I believe that journey was really initiated through a real chronic fatigue that had unfolded in your life and probably come very unexpected off of the back of a very successful corporate career and several other things in your life. And yeah, I'd love to hear your story, the journey that you've taken to be a guide for other people, and the hero's journey and the challenges that you've had in order to begin listening to your intuition and let that be an authority in your life.
Yeah, for sure. Love to share.
So where would you love to start? What's prominent for you?
Well, it is like you said, I never expected to have such a change in my life. And it really was catalyzed by really getting truly sick from one day to the other. It started with just a flu that wouldn't go away, and then an incredible tiredness that you can't explain to people unless they felt it themselves. It's like you think, oh my God, when will I ever get up? To the point that I had to live with my mom again. And I was in my 30s and I was in my prime of my life, lived with my friends, had a beautiful relationship. But yeah, I crashed. And also in hindsight, looking back, because I was there for everybody else and was the person I thought everybody wanted me to be. So what happened is that I became a caretaker for the whole world around me. And then my partner at the time got really sick out of the blue. He had a psychotic kind of fall, a downfall, I want to say. And what happened is that he had to be medicated, live with his mom, and I lost him in a way because he was medicated, and I was traveling between my high demanding first job and then him, and then I also was organizing my best friend's wedding, which was a huge wedding where a lot of important people were invited, and it was a lot of pressure, and I just wanted to keep helping everybody else and lost complete sight of myself. And so basically complete connection with myself.
So let's go back a little bit, even before that, right? So you're growing up in your family of origin and you're learning, to be the good girl, it sounds like. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to share about that period before you went out into the world of work, and what made you choose the path of a lawyer?
Yeah, well, again, it's a funny story because yes, of course, I was so aware of what people thought of me. I didn't like people being angry with me or rejecting me or not liking me. So I became really attuned to what people wanted of me or how they felt. So my empathic skills really grew at the time, but not always very good, because what it meant for me is that I would not feel what I felt. I would only feel them and attune to them. And that happened when I chose law. Like my father, I wanted to do psychology. I think my father said something like, oh, you can't make money with that, or oh, there are statistics in there with math, and I don't think you should do that. And he meant really well, you know, he wanted to help me, but I took that very serious. And then I thought, oh, okay, so that's off the table. Now what? And basically, out of no clue of what else, I thought, well, with law, I can go many directions. Let's do that. And it was the most boring study I could have ever done. It doesn't suit me at all. I'm a right brain person, but it's a left brain study.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
had no idea.
So you went into HR, did you? Was that your first job, the big job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
became
after
a HR
uni,
manager.
you go into
Yeah.
HR management. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you're,
Yeah.
responsible for, I think you said 100 people or something. So you've got this massive team.
Responsible. Yeah. And it was funny because the person for this job had to had 3 years of experience and I had none, but they took me because they loved my personality and loved how strong I came across. And of course, you know, that's what I sold them. And I did really well, but I burned myself completely in the ground. You know, it was way too much responsibility for me as a first job, especially next to, a partner that got quite sick.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how old were you at this time as this was happening?
I was 29, 30. Yeah.
Mhm. So your best friend's getting married and it's quite an important kind of royal do. And, so you have a role in that wedding. It's not the bridesmaid, it's something
No,
much
I'm the
more public.
ceremony master. I'm the one organizing it all.
Oh, we're also
Yeah.
dignitaries and royalty and it's all on your plate. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a lot of people coming there, and you want to do well, and you want do not let people down, basically.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually it sounds like you get into the job and then you start to notice, I guess, symptoms in you.
Yeah.
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 So tell us
Uh,
about that.
As I always describe it, also to my clients, is I started to get white flags from my body and I wasn't listening. So I started to get flus and then I started to have, where I was sick for 3 weeks and I started to get a little bit worried, but then I got better again and I kind of kept pushing myself. And everybody around me started to say, Kat, you're doing too much. This is impossible. You're driving half an hour to your work, after your work, an hour to your boyfriend who lived with his mom and couldn't take care of himself anymore, to end up with him there being a plant and then go back. And what happened is that, at some stage, and it's unkind that I say plant, but he was just so disconnected that I couldn't really connect. And that in itself was very sad, right? So
Mm.
I had to keep everything going. So I was just keeping the balls up.
Also a period of grief for you because you'd had this very happy relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And what happened then is interesting because by the time I really crashed and I got sick, I was so tired and sick. I remember I went to an acupuncturist, which is probably one of the first spiritual things I really did. And I could cry and cry and cry and sobbing and told him about the situation with the boyfriend and everything. And he said, maybe you need to take a break, just take care of yourself first. So what I did is I went to my boyfriend afterwards crying and saying, my acupuncturist says I should not see you anymore. I couldn't even take responsibility myself,
Oh, wow.
so that at least he would then, not be cross at me. And because I didn't know, I was so confused. I didn't even know what to think anymore. And and in the end, that's what happened. We took a break, or I finished it. And then within a couple of months, he was finally better. I was kind of like back on his feet. And then he had another girlfriend. And it was really interesting to see that even though I knew our relationship was finished and I did that, that was so hard, to see him just go off. And it was a big lesson also in my friendships to realize that, the truth of my relationships, like what am I investing? Is it true? Am I doing this for them? Am I giving myself away? So it was a huge epiphany about how am I actually relational? What am I actually doing? Who am I?
Mm.
So yeah,
You're still working at this point. You're still you're still going into work every day and showing up every day, but you're ignoring the fact that you're tired and that you're overdoing it. What's the point where, you said enough, basically?
Well, one point was when this happened with him. That's why I started talking about him. And that's where I realized I couldn't anymore. So, and that's where I started for a little while to work part-time. I had a good friend there, and he said to me, Kat, you should just stop. It's not that if you stop that the company will die, but I had the conviction that what I built, nobody else could do that. And he said, you're replaceable. It was very hard to hear, but you're just replaceable. And then in the end, I think after 8 months, I stopped completely working because I couldn't do anything anymore. And true, again, someone filled my role even better than I ever could have. So it was a really great mirror to the world that I created wasn't really true. And I put so much pressure on myself. So
Yeah.
I think I needed to fully lose myself and connection to myself to find myself back again and to realize, what am I here to do?
It's such a good point that actually it's when we find ourselves in points of crisis, we have actually built our life upon an illusion, whatever that illusion
Completely.
is.
Mm.
It's just that we
Yeah.
often have resisted letting that illusion go.
Yeah.
We held on. I know that pattern myself, holding on to it and terrified of letting it go and being insistent that it has to be the way
Yeah.
I designed it in my head. But life
Mm.
usually has a much bigger plan for us, more than we can ever allow ourselves to receive when we're in that
Absolutely.
type of dynamic.
Yeah.
So, talk us through a little bit of the journey of being ill and what you learned from that, and how then your real purpose and your real passion and your real, you know, talent started to come through.
Listen, I tried everything. First, medically, they told me I had a post-viral virus, and I just had to sit it out, basically. I asked one of the doctors, internists, I asked them, I think after a year or so, I asked them, do I have chronic fatigue? Because somebody mentioned it to me, and he said, you don't want to have that. So he said no. And basically, you don't want to have that, because then you might not get better or end up in a wheelchair.
Well, yeah.
And so I was like, okay, right. So I dismissed that for another year until I found, the details of what it was and realized, shit, I've got this. But after the medical world, because there was nothing else, I tried, name it, and I've done it. I can't even mention how many things I've tried, from kinesiology, acupuncture, massages. I've sat in a room with people with white gowns and holding hands. I was like, to the stage that when I thought, if I have to put a tulip in my ass and run around in the world naked, I'll do it. I was so desperate, to get well. And then at some stage, I met a shaman slash psychic.
Before you
And
go there, just before you go there, so explain to us the stage of your illness. Like, what did that look like on a daily basis? Just for
yeah, good
anybody
question.
listening who doesn't actually know what this is and how it can
Yeah,
impact your life.
sure, sure. Good question. Well, listen, I was so tired. I couldn't do my laundry, couldn't do my shoppings, lived with my mom for a long time. But then I realized that she was so worried about me. And I understand, it's so hard to see a child like that, that I needed my own place. I needed to live by myself. So I found a tiny little room in Amsterdam, and I had friends around the corner, and she found it really hard to let me go. And then I needed to take care of myself there. So I had to push myself. But, there were times that my friends would come and they looked in my fridge and there was nothing in there. And they were like, Kat, just call us. And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't want to bother. But
Yeah.
also, it was to the stage I got allergic to a lot of things, which meant I had intolerances. So if I would eat something, I would get really tired, headaches, pains, aches. I couldn't move my arm at some stage. So there were so many things that were happening, and I was eating at some stage. I remember I was eating brown rice. I could eat boiled eggs and avocado. I think that was my diet at some stage. So it was really weird. and I was losing so much weight, and a lot of people around me didn't understand me, and they thought I had anorexia. I've lost a few friends through there. Not that they didn't want to help me, they just didn't know what to do or how to help me. It was just I also felt I was very internal, and it was funny. I'm such an extrovert person, and I was always out there, and I never wanted to be alone. And all of a sudden, I lived by myself, and my world was so small, and I kind of like, oh, finally.
Mm.
So what I did was reading spiritual books. I read and I read and I read, and I felt like coming home. It's like, why didn't anybody tell me about this? Why didn't anybody tell me about this is how the world, because it resonated so deeply with me. Every book that I read, I started to, energetically lift up more and more, but my body was deteriorating more and more. Right. So it was tough, but there was also a light at the end of the tunnel, because I felt there was there was a bigger meaning here. I have to say that on a physical base, every day you wake up, when will this be over? When will this be over? Every practitioner I saw, with all the gazillion ones I saw, I would ask, when will this be over?
Mm.
And I've had people tell me, there was one doctor, the last one I saw before I met the shaman, and he was a good doctor. I was on a list for him because he was so famous in the south of Holland, so I had to get there by train. Don't ask me how I got into it. Finally did all his electroid acupuncture healing and all the wisdom that he gave me and supplements, go home and then recover for the whole week. I couldn't do anything. And I
Mm.
did that for 8 months. And I asked him, like, when will I get better? And he said to me, in 5 years, you will be a bit better, but you will never be the same. And that was so discouraging. I kind of burst into tears. I was like, and basically everywhere I went, I got the same kind of responses. Oh, you're so deteriorated. You might prepare yourself. Maybe you will go into a wheelchair. It was like, I was like, how can this be life? I'm not meant to live this life. That can't be right. So there's a lot of things that happened. And when I met the shaman, I don't know if it's the time for that now, but
Sure.
yeah, I felt she she read my energy. I didn't understand a word of what she was saying, but she gave me a few energy exercises. She said, honey, you're just really you're psychic. And I didn't even know what that meant, right? I went home and had to look in the dictionary because I thought she meant I was crazy. But she said, you're intuitive, you're psychic, you need to do something with it. You're looking outside for the answers, but it's within. And I thought, well, that's easy to say. How to believe do I do that? And she said to me, listen, if you work with me, I've got you better in a year and better than ever. And I thought, oh, 5 years. And not really, you're not better. 1 year. And I thought, I don't know what you're doing, but that's what I want to do.
So
She really saw that it was a journey that I was in. It was far more spiritual, and she was the second person that told me. There was one doctor, and I was on his wait list for very, very long. I will never forget it. And I came into his room, and I had this list, right? List. I filled it in for days because I was so tired. It was 20 pages of all my health stuff in there. And I had accumulated quite a few information. So I was like, oh my God, this is like a diary, right? I could fill in all my symptoms. I had so many by that time. And I sat there, and you know what he said? He even didn't look at that pile that I filled in. He said, oh, you're just very spiritual, but you don't know it yet.
yeah.
And I said, okay, so how do I fix this? He said, no, this is just a journey. Can't help you. And I just wanted to strangle him at the time. Later on, I understood what he was saying. I was still with my boyfriend at the time, and he said, he's so wrong for you. That's not the right frequency for you. He's not in your frequency zone. He's in a different path than you. What are
You
you
mean
doing with
the
him?
boyfriend is in the wrong frequency?
Yeah, yeah, we are not a match. He's like, you're very spiritual. You're supposed to go in this path, and he's on that path. But I got really cross. I was so pissed off. So she was the second person telling me that. But this time I believed it because she muscle tested me with kinesiology, and she showed me.
Okay.
And then, funnily enough, around the same time, I did a kinesiology test with someone that basically told me She said, can you say out loud, I want to get well? And I said that, and my body said no. And she said, can you say out loud, I want to stay sick and die young? And my body said, yep. And so we fine tuned why that was. What was the subconscious belief? And it was actually really interesting. It was my body thought that if it would get well, it would have to go back to that life of human resource or law, or, the matrix, the structure that I didn't want to be in anymore.
Wow.
And so meeting the shaman was the bridge to, oh, there's another world. I can do something completely different. So I had to tell my body, like, hey, you can do something different here. You don't have to go back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So much sense.
Mm.
I can't tell you. Like I can recall even when I was in London at about the age of 17, 18, and I was working in fashion and I really hated it. It wasn't my world. And I was starting to have kind of symptoms where I just couldn't get up. I couldn't even make a cup of tea and I didn't understand it. But I left it. I left those jobs and I never went back. And I went on my path. We won't go there. It's a whole other story, but it really explains to me what I was experiencing there. It's like our soul knows. And if we're trying to go against our soul, the body just says, hell no, hell no.
Yeah. Yeah. That. And also the subconscious beliefs that are holding on to what is familiar to them, to it. So my journey to other people, to help them. What happened is that I really wanted to also do that kinesiology, to show where their subconscious beliefs were holding them back. And then I started, so there is this, all the things that I've learned through all the sessions I've done, and especially from that shaman initially, I started to do with others because they helped me, right? She in the end took me to New Mexico because at some point, with everything we were doing, I lived in the Netherlands at the time. I am from the Netherlands. I lived in Amsterdam. And so basically, we were at a dead end. It wasn't working. And she says, you need to go to New Mexico. I've got, an incredible healer there. And you need to go there and heal. And I was so tired. I was 47 kilos. My mom was like, what are you doing? So
Yeah.
I had to bring my mum in literally and talk to her. I'm like, she's going to think, oh my God, I'm mental. I'm talking to the shaman lady. But she was actually really good. She explained to my mum, listen, your daughter is really sick and I will take really good care of her, but she really needs to go there. I've got a good friend. She can live with her for 3 months and she needs to do this because I don't know what else will happen. She says, if you don't go in 10 days, I don't know what will happen. And she basically meant, I don't know if you will die. And I'm not sure if that was the truth, but I do know that I decided in that moment, yeah, I'm going to try everything to get well. So I was on that plane within a week,
Wow.
you know?
I mean, I've got loads of questions. Like I've got questions about how did you cope financially? Because that's a massive thing that
Yeah,
you're seeking out all these different people. You have to pay for it somehow. You have to, and you're not able to work. So it's like not.
I know. I was very lucky because the first year of my work kept paying. And then when I completely stopped working, I got a kind of like an insurance from the government. When you're sick, in Holland, you're very well taken care of. So that really helped. And then amazingly, I got an inheritance from my grandmother that just paid for the trip to America, so I had all these serendipities come in for me to always just help me and get to that point. And I have to say, the people that opened their arms for me there, they hardly charged me anything. They took me in their home. Like, it was pretty amazing, and I got better in New Mexico in the end. That's where I healed.
So it was 3 month. It was a 3 month trip, and it was the recipe that helped you really come
Yeah,
to yourself.
in hindsight, I think it was the belief that I believed that now I would get better. I'm understanding myself a lot better now because, yes, one of the things was I needed to get away from out of my old situation, right? And I also needed to look at my stuff because when I wasn't so down and sick. I think I went to Thailand for a couple of months to see if I would get better there. And I was really sick there as well. I was basically in a hammock for 4 months because I brought the problem, right? I basically brought the problem. I got myself on a plane. Somebody would pick me up there. And I thought maybe I get better here, but I didn't, because I didn't do the work. I didn't do the insights. I didn't do, I didn't understand the connection to myself and to what I came here to do. But when I did, when I went to New Mexico, that's where I stepped off the plane, and even the frequency and the energy there, I felt better. And I started to work with someone that helped me build up my body, because literally he asked me to lift up a stick and I hardly couldn't do it. It was too much. I remember my arms trembling like this, it was a stick. It was not even half a kilo. So he said, okay, we need to build you back up. And I needed to get to this. It is a bit of a funny story, but it is, she told me about this magical machine, right? And this magical healer, and this amazing woman that was going to help me. And I had this huge vision of, oh my God, this is going to be so amazing. And when I arrived there, it was just a juice bar with an American 70-year-old lady. And she had this kind of little machine that, personal trainers use to show your fat and your muscles. And she basically said, oh, yeah, you're very low fat mass and you need to drink wheatgrass. And I was allergic to wheat. And I bursted into tears and said, this is what we're doing now. And but then there was this kind of energy in me that said, this is it. This is it. Don't doubt what she looks like, what she does. Just follow what she says. So I got to do 6 shots of wheatgrass and juices, and I started to train my way up. I had massages every day, chiropractic treatments, ozone, steam saunas. It was a real revalidation, it was really building myself up. Within a month, I could drive a car, I could walk around, I could move. And basically for me, that whole experience, it was the trust that I could, but it was from the connection to self when I realized, oh, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. The shaman teacher told me, if you're not going to do anything in this field, she said, I don't care whether you do readings, whether you do astrology, palm reading, I don't know, cards, whatever you do, whatever you pick, do it and let the energy come through, because that's who you are. If you don't do that, you will end up old and shriveled and in a wheelchair, and you will die unhappy. That's what she told me. And you know what? I believed her. I don't know if she was right, but I said that was the pepper in my ass, right? To start with this work, and also to start then giving back. I started doing the dragon meditations that she taught me.
Yeah.
In my living room.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think the evidence speaks for itself that today you're well,
Mm.
and we could say that's just the power of belief, but we could also say that that is you choosing to actually see through the illusion, because society does present us with an illusion and it's very hypnotic. Yeah,
Mm.
because it offers
Yeah.
us safety for one,
Mm.
right? Especially in the West. It's, you know, if you follow the trajectory of school, education, university, career, at least you're going to be safe.
Yeah.
You might not be fulfilled, but you'll be safe.
Mm.
Whereas
Yeah.
when we go on a path like this, there is no path. There is absolutely
Mm.
no path. You have no way of knowing how things are going to go. And so every step is really, you know, an invitation to go deeper, to listen deeper.
Yeah. And that's what I teach now, is because so many people in this society are not connected with themselves, and I had to go through that deep journey. And it took me so long because I was so far away from myself. It needed to take all these different steps to really connect.
Yeah. So those patterns, right, of pleasing and, never upsetting anybody, it's so deep. And so we choose all
Mm.
of the things that, that show us, oh yeah, you're gonna please these people by this. You're gonna, so we keep on choosing in all sorts of different ways those things that are actually in opposition to that deep listening.
Absolutely.
Eventually it all just comes apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're on the road to recovery. You've come back from your trip. And because you come back, right? You come back from New Mexico at some point.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you go home to Holland? Where do
I
you go?
went home to Holland, and by that time I had an apartment where I lived, and a little bit closer to my mum as well, but a little bit bigger, and it was nice. And I started to really work. Like, I started already in New Mexico to do readings for people. I had, it was funny. I did it with my sister. I remember that she told me, okay, let's see if this works. So she was working in a corporate business, right? A big one. And I didn't know anyone there. And she would just run all these names by me. She said, okay, this person. And I just started to download all this information and tell her about them. And she was in awe. She was like, how the fuck do you know that? How's that possible? And I said, I don't know. And so then she started to introduce me to people. I started to do readings, and even though I was shitting my pants, of course, because I'm like, who am I to do this? But this information would come through, it would take over, people would be amazed. And you know it started to really work. I have gone back to America for 3 times 3 months, to keep because I did feel, I would slip back a little bit in the Netherlands often, so I would go back. But I did start working, doing meditation circles in my living room, which started with a couple of friends, and then I was sitting there with 15 people. It was very natural because I was doing what I loved, and I was just exploring. It was just fun.
Yeah,
So
gorgeous.
I really, truly loved that. And I have to say that in the beginning, I was so nervous to do readings, and I needed to earn some money by that time, really. And I remember that, that shaman said to me, my teacher said, just be out there, just be out there. So I went to a cafe in Holland, sat there with my little card deck in the hope somebody would walk past and say, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I do readings, 10 euros, please. So, and then I started to do, those psychic fairs, which is very uncomfortable for me because there's all these people with these purple gowns, right, and gongs, and I don't know, I'm sitting here in my clothes in my white little table with my cards, but exactly the right people would be drawn to me, so I would do readings there. And then I had, applied for a reading spot at this huge spiritual center in Holland, or in Amsterdam, and they basically got back to me like, well, no, you don't have the experience, right? But they kept my file.
Right.
And to be honest, I'm really happy it didn't happen then. But then a year later, they called me and they said, we've got a spot. Are you still interested? And by that time, I was quite busy. And I thought, oh, yeah, I can do once in 3 weeks. So I did do that. And I got so many clients from there. So it's also always about timing, you know, that's when I was ready. What happened is I started to get more and more clients and working in that way. And yes, I did meet a man, and yeah, it was really funny at a family constellation, of course, workshop. So that was really lovely, to meet someone who was very like-minded. We were very much in the same kind of field. He turned out to do family constellations as well. So we would often explore with my groups. We would do family constellations there. We would connect and play together with spirituality, and with tools and with energy. And I have to say, talking about that, coming from quite a few relationships that weren't functional, when I met him, I thought, I'm not going to be anyone else than myself. I don't care what he thinks of me. So I remember at one stage, I was kind of almost trying to push him away. I was kind of like, because I was alone. I had been alone for 5 years when I met him. So I was actually really happy. So when I met him, he told me, oh, you're it. And I'm like, oh, I'm not sure about that. And but I remember that I always did my ritual. I had a little candle burning, and I was like, okay, my gratitude for the day. And then I would, I don't know, bless someone. And I was sitting there in front of my altar, and he said, what are you doing? And I thought, oh yeah, I'm just, do a little thank you and all that. And he's on his knees next to me. Okay. So, okay, I'm grateful for, and he starts to rant up all the sandwiches he ate that day and whatever. But the great thing is, And the point that I'm making is that if you're really connected to yourself, you will draw people to you that love you completely for who you are. Right. I thought I'm going to show him all the good, the bad. I'm just not going to hold back or in. I just don't have time for that anymore. And it was really refreshing
Mm.
because, you know, before I always tried to become a picture of what I thought the other person wanted me to be.
So this is a real indication of you beginning to break free from the patterning of, pleasership, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so you start a family, move to Australia.
Yeah. I have a beautiful baby girl, which was really a miracle because, you know, with what I've gone through, you know, I didn't think I would ever be able to have a child. But after the pregnancy, I got my symptoms back, and quite of them. And my teacher at the time that I was still in contact with said to me, "Yeah, you're really losing it now. It's really going down. You need to do something." And she's always wanting me to go to Australia. She said Australia is a really good energy for you. You need a warmer climate. And we traveled in America, both of us. I brought him to the place where I got healed, and we traveled, and we loved America, and we felt really good. But it was just not our culture. It was just not. We loved the nature, but we weren't really connecting in the places where we were to the people. And when we went to Australia, that was much more a click on all levels. So we started traveling there, and we realized this is where we want to be.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we moved because of that.
And
Yeah,
so,
and really quick.
yeah. So your practice just keeps on growing, right? And over
Yeah.
many years, you've got clients from all over the world. You've helped many people with chronic fatigue, but also with other things that they want to see about themselves. And then really without much effort, you find that you've created yourself $250,000+ business without all the workaholism, without all the 24/7 around the clock, you know, type shenanigans
Yeah.
that most people will put themselves through, especially when working for oneself, because when you work for yourself, you don't have the security that you have when you're just picking up a paycheck. So
No.
it can be very convincing to, do all the things that is broadcast out there that you need to do in order to generate that kind of a income and a turnover in a business. Except that's not what you
Yeah.
do.
No, it really naturally grew with me. Like in Amsterdam, I had a very natural audience. And when I left the Netherlands, they basically online begged me to keep in contact. And I didn't even know how that would work. But I said, yeah, I'll try. And I thought it would be great when I'm in Perth. That's where I initially started in Australia. I could still stay in contact. And then I started to do my circles there, my dragon circles. And I don't I didn't always work with chronic fatigue. Actually, I only took a few people on. Working with people with chronic fatigue, it's like a whole journey that you take them on. So I could only take maybe one or two a year. I've even initially, before I went all here, I brought someone to New Mexico for 3 months. So it's a big journey. So I worked with all kinds of issues, life issues, and basically now looking back, I think it all had to do with connecting people with self. I also realized with the readings that I was giving, I wanted people to realize that it's not the information that I'm giving them. I wanted them to go in and feel it for themselves. So that's where I brought in the kinesiology and the hypnotherapy and find their own answers instead of me telling them. Right. And that's also with the dragon meditation. It's like an inner journey that you go into, and you get the tools to do that. So that's what I started to do. And it was very natural. I started in my living room again in Perth, and same in Broome. In Broome was really funny. We arrived there after 3 years of Perth. We realized we didn't have we couldn't find a visa for my husband, right? And with my type of work, I couldn't find a visa. So we moved to a regional. We thought we were going to live in Darwin. We just jumped into the caravan. I had $25 in backpack. I had nothing more, But I did my reading from my little caravan and all that. And that's when it started to grow again. I was just really I did my readings on the markets there, and I had 24 people lined up, and then I was booked for months, and it just naturally evolved. I never had to promote. I wasn't even conscious you could do that. I just, I thought if you do what you love, people will come. And
Mm,
that happened.
mm,
It was just really naturally busy. And that's from there I started to think about, oh, maybe I should get an email list, because I would love to keep in contact with all these people. I never had that either. I just always lived in the moment, and whatever came, came.
mhm. So more recently, you've taken a new journey with intuition, haven't you?
Mm, yeah.
And that's somewhat different from how it's been before. You want to explain that in your own words?
Yeah. Well, for me, it just brings me to consciously, daily choose, what you want. So, I've lived my life really much on the in the moment, on the go. Um, and this work make you realize, oh, actually, you can take it a step further, and you can even, instead of letting it all come to you, you can take another step and then let it come to you and take another step. And I've also noticed that, with my health issues, even though I've been, completely cured, I've always had aches and pains and things. And what really helped me with this work as well is to not focus on them anymore, just focus on what I love. And it's an easy thing to say, but it's actually really difficult if you've got a chronic thing like that. And I'm realizing now with my clients as well, bringing this work in, that so much of our focus is in the wrong place,
Mm,
and that was the last thing that I really needed. And there's probably more, I'm always learning, right? But the last thing now that I needed to learn to understand, like, okay, there is a real focus. And if I look back, I think my focus has always been brilliant, having created this life, seeing from where I came from, right? Because doctors told me I would be in a wheelchair and not get better, so for me to be where I am now is like amazing. But to even know that you can keep up leveling in a way where you're true to yourself, but where you don't have to, I don't know, push yourself or promote yourself in a way where you're not true to yourself.
yeah, there's so much of that, really. That
Mm,
culture of push. I speak about this quite a bit in different places. The culture that we're used to, whether we work for someone else or for ourselves, is very much work hard, and it's so noble. It's such a noble um, setup within our consciousness that most of the time we don't even question it,
mm,
because that's what being a good person is. And
yeah.
if you're not doing that, there's clearly, a defect of character on some level. And just learning that we can actually open up and, in a way, relax, in a way, surrender. I mean, there's a balance there at the same time, because you can be so surrendered, nothing ever happens. But you see
Yeah.
what I'm saying? It's almost like the opportunity is always to listen a little bit more deeply, a little bit more closely, and then to follow through. But yeah, you're right. Choices and working with choices is gives us clarity in a way that um, it's so easy to be lost in the noise around and about.
Yes. And, like I've done a lot, like I've studied with energy teachers, with shamans, but also with Joe Dispenza, all these people out there, Marissa Peer, I've done a lot of courses. And every time I did it, I loved it, because there's a part of my soul is going, oh, I'm learning and I'm remembering. It's that really expansive feeling, right? But with Joe Dispenza, for example, and I think everybody in the end teaches the same, right? It's just in a different form. But I remember with him, he really talks about, for an hour you meditate and you really are in this energy. And we did that for 9 months, my husband and I. But then you felt really bad if you'd missed a day, or you felt really bad if you didn't do it right, or if you didn't come out in the state that he wanted you to go. With the choices, for me, I feel like I'm doing it every day. It's short, it's quick, it's tangible. And then you take action on it. So in a way, what that kind of work does is it brings really the focus to things. It lasers it, and that's something that I truly needed in my life. And I love that you do it on not just the work,
Yeah.
kind of field. You do it on all levels.
Yeah, yeah, it's
So
really
that's
about the wholeness of you, not just a section of you, not just a piece of you.
yeah.
It's about your entire soul and what you need as an entire whole being.
If you look at my business, what are you actually doing? What am I bringing to the world? It is that connection to self. It is that, who are you really? What is the truth of you? How can you shine your essence really out? And so that's basically what I'm doing. I'm using those choices, but I'm also using, you know, I, I just can't lose that spiritual connection that I initially had, right? What I learned with the shaman. So I'm giving that in a course, or in, you know, I want to say a modality where people can really touch to that connection. I'm also helping people, going through a course where they really truly connect with the heart and the soul and the essence of who they are, but also just the ego. What is in the way? What are your patterns? And I love doing that. Love taking people on
Yeah,
that journey, because I had to go through that, and it fulfilled me in so many ways I can't even explain,
yeah,
so I
yeah.
guess that's just my biggest passion, and how can that not be good?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I see this massive shift, that's occurring internationally. And I'm sure everything that happened to us in 2020 is an accelerator for that, for people to actually start to question, well, why am I here? And what is this for? And, more and more people are starting to find the way to that. And we are here to help people with all of that. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And it's not only the heart and the soul and the essence. Energy is a big part of it as well. So many people are not aware of their energy or of their body. For me, biggest healing was connecting with my body and connecting with, what does energy actually do? Where am I actually at? Where am I losing it? And
yeah,
when you become aware of that,
yeah,
that's where life becomes fun. I remember my teacher always saying to me, is energy ruling you, or are you mastering the energy? Right. And then I realized, yeah, man, I'm totally ruled by energy, and energy meaning people, thoughts, everything around us. Right.
yeah. It's very interesting that you mention the energy of even a place and its impact,
Absolutely.
and
Mm,
how that affects us. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess there are people whose specialty is that, this is the energy of this land, this is the energy of this place, this is the energy of this home.
Yeah. And I've done that too. See, in my process of understanding myself and my gifts, I've done that for a little while, cleaning places, energies, people, with my husband together and sometimes alone. And gosh, there's a real truth to that. But I also realized, yeah, my biggest passion in the end is bringing back to themselves, people back to themselves, and go within and take responsibility for that, but also become your own master of your own life, energetically, physically, spiritually. But yeah, I have met a really interesting, cool crew of people that can do that. And it's powerful. It's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes total sense to master it within ourselves first, because then we naturally align to the places that are going to be the most supportive to us, you know?
Well, and also, Liz, what I work with a lot, like I've got a lot of empaths in my groups, right? And empaths mean you walk into a room and you feel everybody, and you feel the atmosphere, and you start acting on it. Some people start to take responsibility. Some people become the clown. Some people, just start to lift the whole room up. Some people are quiet, but all the people that do whatever because of their empathy, they come home and they're depleted. They need a life infusion, and it's because they are not aware of their energy, and it's actually a gift, but it feels like a curse. And that's what I work with a lot as well, is that it's not about, you know, constantly giving yourself away or managing. It is about aligning with your energy and understanding your energy. And for a long time, and that's funny because that's where I outgrew that other shaman, is she talked a lot about protecting your energy. And over the years, I realized it's not about protecting yourself. It's about aligning yourself, you know, because when you protect, you evoke attack. You know, when you live your life like this, you give kind of the energy out of, oh, I need to protect myself, right? But when you align, when you connect, you're in your own essence, you radiate your energy out. You don't need protection. You know, it is that real essence of, yeah, I am aligned. And that's what I work with a lot, aligning with the earth, with the universe, with your own core. And
That's,
that's where your energy really is in balance.
yeah, that's awesome, Kat. Love that.
So the reason that I got so sick, according to my shaman, you know, the teacher, she taught me that I was actually energetically everywhere but in my body. And I was a huge empath, you know, and I needed to learn to control my energy. And the reason that I wasn't controlling my energy is because I was out there helping everybody energetically. She taught me that we're not just human bodies, we're energy. And when we think of someone else, we're there. It's like when the phone rings and you think of someone, and then that person is actually that person. We think we're psychic, but it's energy. And that's what she taught me, is that, listen, you need to be aware of where you're at, what you're taking on. When you walk in a room, what do you feel? And afterwards, if you're depleted, it means that you have done something with your energy. And with me, it came from my pleasing modality or belief that I needed to be there to help. Some people try to take responsibility or make people feel better, but I really lost my energy to other people constantly. And she taught me tools, prominent tools that I'm still teaching to people today, where you are aligned in your own energy and where you're aware and you can instantly just stay in your own energy and be conscious of that. And that's what I needed to learn. And when I started doing that, my energy started to slowly come back. You know, I just needed some physical healing as well.
Wow, that's so powerful. Really, truly. Yeah. I'm excited for people to hear this because I
Mm.
just know that the light bulbs are going to go off for people who've been experiencing that and haven't known what the heck is going on. And just to realize that actually, with a little bit of the right guidance, you can completely reclaim not just your life, but all of your gifts as well. And then start to put them into
Yeah.
play in the world where they can make a real difference. Yeah.
Yeah. When you lose yourself and when you're not aware of where your energy is at, it's when you are completely out of physical, emotional, and spiritual balance. And that's why people are often tired. They don't even know.
Right. Real energy is infinite. Like if we're always really centered and attuned to ourselves, we're not getting that tiredness because we're
Yeah.
aligned. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get, you know, conscious of, am I actually giving my energy away or am I taking energy on? There's a difference in that as well, you know. So there's different tools that you can use to understand, to fine tune what are you actually doing.
Mm.
You know, once I started to learn those tools, how weird I thought they were in the beginning, but that really truly helped me to really also, you know, there was one exercise where she puts you in the back of your body, and I still teach that to every day. And I get emails from all over the world how helpful that one is, because it's basically, if you're in it, it's a drama. When you witness it, it's a comedy, right? It's when you observe that you have a choice, when you're aware, and
You
that
raised,
is something energetic as well.
you raised this brilliant point about our judgments and how our judgments get in the way of us allowing ourselves to follow the path that's meant for us. And I recall this time where when I really started training in my intuition, I had just so much judgment about being in a room with weirdos. And then I started seeing it everywhere, how judgment kept me out of things I would make decisions based on my assumptions and my judgments. And then realizing that when I actually experienced the thing for real, I loved it. And it was nothing like my judgment and nothing like my assumption. And how much we keep ourselves separate from life based on meaningless assumptions and meaningless judgments.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. So, yeah, and part of that is just your inner thoughts and becoming aware of those thoughts and the inner critic, and also what that does again energetically,
Yeah.
because it depletes us. It's that brings me back to the focus. Where's your focus? But that's intertwined with energy.
Yeah. Awesome conversation, Kat. Thank you so much for joining me at a super early time of your morning in Australia there. And yeah, really looking forward to sharing this episode and letting people hear your wisdom and your gifts. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, Liz. Lovely to connect.